My first Rameau production was Castor et Pollux, which was presented, of course, in Dijon a few years ago. And this is the next chapter of hopefully a Rameau trilogy. Platée may come after in a few years, but for me, Boréades is the next chapter. So it's very connected aesthetically and conceptually to Castor and Pollux, although it is a very different story, and more importantly, a very different musical and theatrical landscape. The challenge with Le Boréades, although it's Rameau's most extraordinary score, because he wrote it when he was 80 and never heard it. He died before it was premiered. And the challenges with this piece are that the story itself of this queen who is in love with a man who cannot be her husband, she believes cannot be her husband. And then the revenge of the god of the wind when she decides to not only be with the man that she loves, but also give up her throne for him, is very thin. I mean, the opera is 3 hours, and the story is very thin. What Rameau does in this piece, through dance and through extraordinary meditations on nature and love and loss, is create a sort of cosmos for the piece, which sometimes is quite abstract. So it's not a piece like Castor and Pollux, which has a very dramatic drive. The piece floats in the air. The piece is concerned, I think, with other existential questions that Rameau is asking about love and life. And this, of course, makes it on one hand a challenge, on the other hand also very exciting, because you can bring a lot of other things. It needs help. Boréades does not stage itself. You need to find some concept. And we wanted very much to present a world where it was very clear, like in the piece, that the gods, in this particular case, 3 gods, Amour, Apollo, and Boreas, the god of Boré, the god of the north wind, are manipulating the human beings. We see this in a lot of Baroque opera, but in this piece particularly, we see also a great deal of enjoyment that the gods have in watching the human beings love and lose and mess up. And so this was very important to have 2 levels in the piece. And also with the production, we're trying very much to incorporate that the dance and the chorus and the soloist and the story are all combined in one universe. It's not suddenly the action stops and you get 10 minutes of dance. The dance must be integrated in the narrative. Catherine and I wanted to create a sort of a world of associations, and with starting image I said, you know, it's always, I like very much this idea that that if the gods are observing and manipulating the human beings, then it must be like an experiment of the gods. So we started with the idea of creating a space where people could be observed like little insects in a laboratory. And this idea of the little insect then got conveyed into this sort of white box, which becomes, I don't know, the world, cosmos, a secret box, inside something, outside something. It has many associations. We didn't want to create a domestic space, and we didn't want walls and doors and furniture in this particular production. So this white box becomes anything you want it to be. And it's good, because in the 3 hours of the piece you need to go in lots of places. There's joyous music, there's very sad music, and this box then can transform. Suddenly there's one person in it, suddenly there's 30 people in it, and it creates a space that I think serves the story. And always this idea that these 2 people, Aberis and Alphys, these 2 lovers, are constantly sort of coming together, going apart, coming together, going apart. You never quite really understand their love. It's not real. It's spoken about in music. We hear it in notes. particularly at the end with this extraordinary love duet they sing at the very end of the production. So we know their love is extraordinary. But you never quite are told by Rameau or the librettist really exactly what the love is, which is great, so we can create anything we like. They have to be quite fit. I can't work with lazy singers. And I can't work with singers that say, no, I can't sing in this position. Most positions people can sing in. There are some positions that are impossible, but then that's fine. It's obvious that you can't sing upside down for too long. But I don't want to be seen as being a sort of circus trickster. I'm not asking people to do acrobatics. I love circus, I love acrobats. But that's not why why my productions have such a physical impulse. It's to do with two reasons. Firstly, because I believe very much that opera, the DNA of opera is Greek theatre, and which is the founding, if you like, the founding stone of Western theatre tradition. And in this tradition, music and dance had one other element to that. There was the body. There was no set. There was just an open space. We don't know what it was like to sit there, to watch Euripides and Aeschylus and Sophocles. We don't know. We really don't know what it sounded like either. We know from the texts what was happening. We know from sort of masks and engravings. But it must have been an extraordinary ritual that was created there through the invention of the actor. And the actor was at the center of this, the actor's body and the actor's voice. And in opera, you have then, a few hundred years later, in the Italian Renaissance, the rediscovery of ancient Greek theatre. And yet again, the voice was there. The body tended to sort of disappear because then people became obsessed with just la voce, just the voice. And that's wrong, because the voice has to come from somewhere, and the body has to be animated. And I create very strong images in my productions, and I love working with light and set and costume, but it's only there to serve what the performer does. The performer must be at the center, the motor of the production. If a set is the motor, it's dead. And I think with singers, it helps them also to sing and to breathe and to get into a role if you can liberate their bodies and make them aware. I mean, there are brilliant opera singers who are fantastic actors and use their bodies. And I'm not talking about just good-looking people, because I've worked with some people who are very, very large, and very, very tall, and very, very small, and are fantastic. So it's nothing to do with like what someone looks. It's the connection between the soul and the voice and the body. And so these three elements must be connected. They must be used together. And you can either do it or you can't. Also, I think that there has to be a certain virtuosity in performance. I think people on the stage should be doing things that normal people can't. It's not something that you just get up and do. I think there needs to be a certain degree of virtuosity in what people can do on the stage. And the last thing is that I think that through the use of the body, or making opera singers aware of their bodies and what is possible, you can create a much more rich theatrical experience. It's not light or dark. Love, my personal view is that love is complex and love is contradictory, and love, there are no rules. And I think the great operas celebrate that, whether it's Mozart or Janáček or Monteverdi or Puccini. It's complicated, it's messy. There can be moments of great romanticism, but I think it's it's particularly in the great Baroque pieces, the idea of love or how love is presented really must stem from what the composer has done with the music. And what Rameau does is exactly what Monteverdi does, which is constantly shift between major key and minor key in the music. So a lot of the time someone says, you know, I love you, and they start to sing in a minor key. And then this will transform into moments of a major key and then back again. And the tonality is very, very, very undecided. This happens a lot in Monteverdi, less so in Handel, because of the da capo arias. Handel is presenting you with much clearer choices of emotional choices. But in Monteverdi and Rameau, this ambivalence thing, and that's so that it's in the music. I mean, there are often places where they singing about their love, but they sound so sad. So there's always resignation in love in these pieces. And we must understand also, I mean, Rameau was 80, he didn't know he was going to die, but he knew his life was drawing to an end. So I think there's someone looking back on his life in lots of ways. And so the music has a very particular quality. And it's a good question. If you look at most of the love music, when they're talking about love, it sounds terribly sad. And I don't think it's sad depressing or sad melancholic. I think it's resignated. I think this is a sense of the fragility of the love, of the cloud passing the blue sky on the summer's day, or suddenly a rainstorm. And I think this is a much more convincing and realistic idea about love than just to have two people expressing joy all the time. This is uninteresting after 10 minutes. It's interesting. In the Rameau piece, I have a theory, and it's only a theory, that he didn't want to stop writing it because he knew that if he stopped writing, it would be the last one. So he writes about 4 endings. Normally, Apollo would come down, Deus ex machina, and tell the character, you are my son, everything's okay. A small chorus, a dance, curtain. No, not with Rameau. So you get that, you think, aha, and then you get the most extraordinary duet in the piece. Okay, you think, that's fine. And then he goes, no. After the duet, the tenor has to get an aria, although he knew the tenor he was writing, so maybe the tenor said, I want an aria at the end. But then he gets another extraordinary aria, and then there's a dance at the end. So there's a series of endings. You just get the feeling he didn't really want to stop writing. And it's great because then you can stretch. The two of them are left on stage, and to make it, I got my idea of the ending because I didn't want just a happy ending where suddenly they're together and it's okay.